Hey everyone, welcome to episode 17 of the Ceres podcast. In this episode, we talk to Managing Director of the Chesterford Group, James Lipscombe. The Chesterford Group comprises of the brands Fishnchickn, Churchill's Fish and Chips, and Banker's Fish and Chips, which operate out of 40 locations. We discuss so many great topics, including the business model of having to work via the delivery aggregators like Just Eat, Uber Eats, and Deliveroo. We also talk about running the business of this scale and many of the challenges. There are so many great topics in this episode that I don't want to ruin it by giving it all away in the intro. Do us a favour and be sure to leave us a written review in iTunes. I hope you enjoy this episode. James, thanks for your time today, mate. For those that don't know who you are the Chief Executive or Managing Director. I think they're both interchangeable, aren't they?
Yep.
Of the Chesterford Group, which is the parent company of Fishnchickn, Bankers and Churchill's. So just, again, want to say thank you right off the bat because we're going to have a pretty long conversation by the looks of things. We've got lots of notes here. So tell us a little bit about how Fishnchickn came about, the founding of the company. Let's start there.
Okay, yeah, sure. So our family sort of love affair with fish and chips really started in 1923. My great-grandfather was a coal miner up in Accrington. Unfortunately, he was made ill from working in the mines. Decided to move down to the tropics of Essex to try and make himself feel a little bit better, and decided to buy a fish and chip shop in Romford. And then from then on, it was actually my grandfather sort of took the business on from there. He got fed up of working as a stockbroker in the city when he came back from World War II, which was what he was doing before. He left to chase Germans for 5 years, came back and then bought a fish and chip shop in Harold Hill in Romford, which is a store that we still own today. And then really it kind of sort of leads on to, my father. He was actually doing a hotel management course and decided that he didn't really enjoy that halfway through doing the course and actually really enjoyed working in his mum and dad's fish and chip shop. So it's really sort of kind of in our blood, I'd say. I've grown up with the business, talking about it at the dinner table as a family, as you always do, I think, with family business, and I've always been incredibly interested in it. And really it was my father who successfully scaled the business. He created the Fishnchickn brand as it is today in 1971, where he bought a shop in Harlow, which again we still own today. And he really scaled it successfully. And his two brothers came on board, although they didn't really take an active role in the business. And he just sort of got his head down and got on with it, really, bringing 4 kids up, and worked incredibly hard. And then sort of takes me to sort of when I joined the business in 2000. And I've always had a passion for the business. There's no doubt about that, and a passion for the industry. When I was a little boy, my dad used to pick me up when I was on my school holidays, and I used to go and visit the shops with him and get put in a few chip barrels if I was a bit too cheeky to some of the managers. But I loved it at sort of 7, 8, 9, 10 years of old, to see how many portions of chips I could eat on the way around, and also just spending time with my dad in the car was just special moments for me, as I didn't really see him much when I was growing up because he was working so hard. So it was it's sort of through that, I think, that I've kind of really found my passion and for the business. And then in 2000 I finished my A-levels and I started working in the company. I used to work in the shops in school holidays and so on, so it was an environment that I felt comfortable in. And I spent 4 years working in the shops. Started as a trainee assistant manager in Harlow, assistant manager. There's quite a lot of pressure on me at that time, really, because I think we had probably 20 stores about then, and every time you go into a new store, you need to basically prove to the management that you can do the job. I think if you want to think of something that somebody got wrong, I probably did it along that journey. But one thing that I definitely did get was respect from doing that. Even today, I still go and work in the shops every Friday night. I still go and cook fish and chips. We certainly don't make any money with me sitting on my backside in the office. And I thoroughly enjoy it. Quite often still cleaning batter off my shoes on a Monday morning before I come into the office with a meeting with a bank manager.
Nice.
And that's really important, that you have to keep that common touch, and you have to realise that that it's the people in the shops that are really generating the profitability, and they're the ones that you need to look after. They're for me, they're my customers, are the managers in the shops and the team members.
How do you manage to fuse the two different cultures of, and this isn't a question that we put out there, but you've just naturally gone there, but how do you fuse the head office culture and the culture at the site level?
Yeah, sure. I mean, what we did basically last year, we actually sat down as a company, and we took a cross section of people from the company. I think there was probably about 16 of us in a room, and we spent 2 days really hammering out what is the core purpose of our business. What is, culturally, what does the company mean to people? What are our ethics? What are our morals? How do we want to behave? How do we want to act? And then that then created the core purpose of defending the future of fish and chips for our business. Fish and chips is under threat, and it is. There has never been more competition in our sector. That the food industry and the food to go industry has certainly seen a host of fantastic operators coming into the market recently with very ownable brands, a very differentiated product, and so you really have to be on top of your game to be successful in this industry. And you can just see what's going on in the casual dining market with CVAs all over the place. Jamie Oliver, unfortunately, going into administration, as well as Byron Burger struggling, and you can go on and on and on. And it is a very competitive base. It's very competitive at the moment.
It's very buoyant out there, I'd say, at the moment. It's definitely not stagnant. I think there's a lot of closures, but there's also a lot of openings, isn't there?
It's interesting. Yeah. There is. I think, obviously private equity money coming into the market obviously meant that a lot of these companies overexpanded, and then suddenly you just got, you could have, it's a perfect storm really, rising costs, rising rates, rising rents, and suddenly the margin decreased quite substantially for these businesses, and so they were operating on quite a different business model, also mixed in with the fact that they just didn't execute in store as well. And of course, when you're scaling a business, that's crucial. That's just absolutely everything. But when we were in this room and we were coming up with our sort of core purpose, so that's when we really created the values across the business of they're our save values, and the idea is we're saving fish and chips is strive to be better and do the right thing, go above and beyond for our customers, value and believe in each other, and empower each other to be extraordinary. And we're true to those core values every single day, and those core values help us to decide which way we turn when we have a tough decision, but also as a company they help us come together, and they help us to realise that we're all in it together, we need to support each other. And realistically, the role of our shed, as we call it, we don't call it our office, we call it our shed, and our shed stands for Superhero Empowerment Department, because we're here ultimately to serve the management teams in the shops and make sure they can serve our customers in the right way.
So you don't want to be like a top-heavy shed. You want to be there just to sort of facilitate everything that the independent stores need. So in some ways, the Chesterford Group is the owner of 40 independent businesses. Yeah,
exactly right. And we've always encouraged our management teams to treat their shop as their own business, and to make the decisions as if it was their own business, to treat the customers if they were their own customers, and that's really, really important. And of course, that is that cultural, how shall I say, core is just absolutely crucial to any business. And I think when businesses forget that, and certainly they forget who is actually generating the profit and who is actually having that interaction with the customers day to day, I think for me that's when they really start to struggle.
I think I've had a little bit of exposure to Fishnchickn over the years, and in weird places actually. So I've been a customer in some, I've eaten at some. I've met an ex-manager of yours who speaks very highly of you guys. And also once I was doing an event in London, and one of the guys there, I don't know if the woman still works here, but one of the guys there was a chef, and his wife worked here at head office, and everyone I've run into that sort of talks about Chesterford Group as a whole have got nothing negative to say, and that's really rare when you own a business like this. It's really rare. But hats off to you there, because I think that when you run into someone quite random like that and they speak very sort of like positive about a company, I think that's an amazing feat. I think that
I like to think that feeds through to the way in which people stay working for the company. I mean, we have people that have been with us for 35 years, and that kind of loyalty, it doesn't come easily. You need to earn that loyalty, and you need to treat people in the right way. For me, there is no sort of validation or no better validation, for you as a company if somebody is willing to put their child's future career in your hands. And we have 2 or 3 generations of families that work within our business, and that's something for me that I really cherish, and that's a huge responsibility. Hitting the financials and buying new shops or opening new stores aren't what get me out of bed in the morning. What gets me out of bed in the morning is knowing that I'm trying to grow the business to ensure that I can create opportunities for those people to better their lives and the lives of their families, and that's what gets me out of bed.
So talking of staff, you now employ about 550 roughly?
Yes, we do, yeah.
That's quite an impressive number. Give us a little bit of background as to why you decided to change the name from, the company before, essentially, and I might be wrong here, was the Fishnchickn Group, essentially, wasn't it? Yeah. And now it's the Chesterford Group, and you've got the 3 brands. So tell us a little bit about what made you do the name change, and tell us a little bit about each brand that you know. And I don't like calling them a brand, because I know they're your babies, so...
Yeah, sure. I mean, realistically, what we wanted to do is we wanted to try and project a slightly more professional... how shall I say, persona out to the modern business world. And what I was personally finding is I'll be going to networking events, with banks or with lawyers, accountants, and as soon as you say, they say, right, so what company from? You say Fishnchickn. You got some very odd looks. Now, you shouldn't let that bother you, don't get me wrong, but it automatically gets you off on the wrong foot. And obviously in any business environment, credibility is important. And so we felt that we just wanted to project a slightly more professional persona ultimately, which is why we called it the Chesterford Group. But also, on the other hand, we knew that as we were growing, there were going to be some brands that we might want to keep as their own name. For instance, the Bankers brand that we have now on the south coast in Brighton, we've got 3 takeaway restaurants down there. We bought Bankers restaurant in 2006. We had no other brand presence anywhere near Brighton, and it had a really good brand, so why would you change it? So then it's really easy to then have that just sitting under the Chesterford Group, as is Churchill's and Fishnchickn. So it just works really well, and also it just gives us the opportunity, if we do want to go out and make acquisitions, we can do it pretty seamlessly and not have to change company names and so on. And also it's just very easy for people to understand in the outside world how a business is structured as well.
And I suppose if you was to buy another business, another fish and chip shop, essentially it would fit one of those 3 brands.
Yes, it would. It would really. And it's interesting because we had a big debate internally around whether or not, I think we've got 20 odd Fishnchickn stores, 14 Churchills, 3 Bankers, about do we look to rebrand them all Churchills, or what do we do with this? And with fish and chips, it's incredibly difficult to create a single brand which is recognisable, because everybody has their favourite fish and chip shop, and this is certainly one of the barriers we come up against when we buy a new store, which is branded something else. So what we always do is we take that store on, we run it as its own brand for 3 to 4 months. We get to know the customers and the people, and then what we say to people is, we're just having a little refresh, we decided to call the shop something else, we're going to call it this. So when you come in the next few weeks, don't be surprised. And we find that transition is far smoother than taking on a shop, closing it day one, new big sign, you've got it.
Under new management, scare
absolutely.
People off.
And actually we find that that's a barrier, and straight away consumers are walking in thinking they're not going to be good as the other guys straight away.
Not even as good, just how they like it.
Exactly. So it's a
I've always thought
challenge.
The under new management sign is the quick, and this is just my opinion only, but the under new management sign is the quickest way to put people off. And it might be wrong, because I think that if you just changed it from, I don't know, for argument's sake, Dave's Chippy, and I'm not picking a Dave out, but Dave's Chippy, and turned it into a Fish and Chicken or Bankers or whatever, that's already in my mind telling everybody it's changed. So you don't need to actually put another sign up saying under your management. I think it made it pretty clear. But I do find that does scare people off. I might be wrong. So do you find that the name change has helped when you present to landlords and banks, etc.?
Yeah, it definitely does, especially when you're dealing with big property developers, or you're looking to go into the into shopping centres or something like that. When you're working with big city property businesses that have £1 billion portfolios, it certainly helps you to project a more professional persona without a doubt.
I suppose, because in some ways, I suppose, not that they're lazy, but they're probably going to take the easy route and go with someone like Starbucks, Costa Coffee, and so on and so on. So now you've really got to up your game when you present to these guys, because I'm guessing, having good books doesn't cut it, so that name change probably
it just helps. I think what it does is it helps you get your foot in the door,
and then the rest you can do the rest,
and then you can follow through.
Per normal.
I mean, one thing I would say is that people are always very surprised when they come to our shed and they realise they're not dealing with a small business or an unprofessional business.
Because whatever we say, fish and chips still carries that perception.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter how, I think we've touched on it in some of our research, and there's 3 biggish chains in our industry, and they punch well above their weight. And I think that the banks and everyone would be very surprised to know that. And I think, and even lots of independents I know are very professional, but I think it's just that perception. It's just, we can't shake it off sometimes.
No, it's a challenge, challenge.
But I'd imagine also that it's very much like just independent restaurant owners as well, to be honest, I'd imagine. So here's a question that I'm probably jumping ahead on here a little bit. How do you it was meant to probably come after I mentioned about the staff, but how do you sort of recruit staff and then make them sort of like you want to stay? And what sort of schemes have you got going? Because that's got to be pretty difficult as well.
It is. I think the answer is you can never do enough. It's a simple answer. You just can't. So what we try to do is, I think it's really this engagement piece. Really, I think every single person wants to be the hero of their own story, first and foremost. So how do you try and make people the hero of their own story is, that you obviously, you try and make sure you provide the best quality training, you try and ensure they have the right opportunities, you engage with them, you constantly communicate with them. One of the things that I try and do, and it might sound a bit simplistic, but I ensure that I recognise every single body's voice on the telephone when I phone a shop. So I know when they pick up the phone, I'll say, hello Tom, hi John, hi Gary, hi Sarah. And I just think that gives that person the feeling of that they're just not just a number, that they are actually an individual, and that you see them as that, and you recognise them, and that definitely helps to sort of I would say bind them towards the company, just something simple like that, because it just makes them feel like they are just more than a number, really. I mean, the other thing I do is I send out a weekly superhero briefing, I call it. So every single Monday, I send out our previous week's numbers. We're really transparent about turnover, about profitability, customer numbers, all that good stuff, because I think it's really important that the managers and the assistant managers, the teams in the stores, understand why you're making the decisions that you're making. And if they can see that coming through, and you're telling them 3 or 4 weeks in advance that this is coming, this might be coming, look at what's going on in the industry, this is a trend, this is a fad, it really helps them to understand as a business why you make those strategic plays that you do. And for me, it just helps to the whole transition period when you need to make those changes.
I suppose it gets rid of that in some ways. It probably alleviates that big brother effect, which is, we made the decision at head office, you've got to do it. Whereas what you're saying is, we give them plenty of notice, they understand why the decision was made. They may not agree with it, but at least they were informed of it. And I think that's really important, because I think, if anybody's trying to build a sort of chain, I would take that on board massively, because if I was one of your managers and I'm working there, like you said, you encourage them to feel like it's their own, but at the same time, you're then telling them sort of what to do from head office. So there will be a conflict of interest there.
There is, and the hard thing is, how do you try and create a really strong company culture in a multi-site retail location business? That is a real challenge. If we were all in, there's 550 people in an office, it would be far easier than trying to create that. And so that's also why I make sure I get out to the stores. Not only do I work in the shops every Friday, I make sure that I get out to the shops during the week. You've got to, people like seeing you out there. They like talking to you. I mean, even to the point where we've at the shed, we have our central distribution centre as well, and we distribute to our stores. We've got 3 vehicles that do that every day. Is that my father actually phones up and gets the orders in, and it's not. I could ask one of our administration team to do that.
Yeah.
But actually, no, the fact that you have a manager talking to the company chairman and company founder every single day or every other day is incredible. You get that in very few businesses.
Yeah.
And it just then means we actually get to know the people, properly get to know the people who are working within the business. And when you look at, you know, how long people stay with us and the career opportunities they have, I mean, all of our operations managers started as chip boys or team members. All of our company directors started off in the most junior positions in the company. Myself as a chip boy when I was 16, Paul, our operations director, when he was 16, again as a chip boy team member. Emma started off as just a junior administrator within the business. And the pride I have to see those people come up through the business is just unbelievable. It really is. It's a really proud moment for myself and my father to see people thrive and grow. And whenever we have, for instance, any internal positions at the shed, we always make sure that, especially in the junior roles, not quite so easy if they're specialist roles, obviously, but you know, in the junior roles, that we put those roles out to the stores first and foremost, because you know, in our shed at the moment, I think we've got three members of staff here, three superheroes that started off as team members in our stores. You know, payroll, IT, HR. You know, it's fantastic to see them grow.
It's great for them to have that sort of career curve within the same business as well.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and that is what we generally try and give them.
So moving on to mergers and acquisitions. So here's a very simple one. Everything's simple, isn't it, until you say it? Yeah. So do you prefer buying existing businesses with goodwill or starting shops from a fresh start?
I think it's really, again, it's about business objectives. What are your business objectives for that year or 2 years? I think anything longer than 2 years in this current economic environment is just a guess. I think probably 2 years is a guess. But in a simple answer, I would say it depends. If you're trying to scale your business and you're trying to scale your business quickly, I believe it's quite difficult to do that through just acquisitions. I think that they're just are not the opportunities out there of the scale that you need to make big acquisitions. There's just not enough basically brands out there that operate 8 to 10 shops. And as soon as you can make those acquisitions, then it does make sense and you can grow quite quickly. I think really it's a mixture of three things, which is buying existing businesses, searching out A1 units and getting change of use on them, empty units, and number three, developing new build sites with shopping developers or new neighbourhood shopping centre
new
developers.
Estates and everything. Yeah,
you've got it. Yeah, I think realistically, you need to have your eyes open to all of those opportunities all the time. And then it's about creating a pipeline of stores, good kind of 2 years out, really. So
generally, if you was to look to acquire a business, would they usually come to you or you go to them? Does it work both ways? Or
yeah, I would say it probably works. On the whole, people tend to come to us.
Yeah.
We don't tend to approach people. We normally have enough going on.
Yeah.
And then we always try and make a deal happen. We're incredibly entrepreneurial like that. Whatever we can do to make the deal happen, we do. And we kind of we very rarely will approach a business to purchase it, to be honest with you.
I suppose the only way, again, not trying to set out a business plan for anyone, but I suppose the way you'd probably do it if it was multiple sites, and there's not many of those, is there now?
No, there isn't. No, there isn't. And realistically, as you say, it's with multiple sites because you need to put the management infrastructure, especially if they're quite far away from your existing core business, then you need to put the management infrastructure to manage that. I was
really sort of like impressed by one chain in our industry recently who was a southern chain and literally just bought out a load of units up north, and I thought to myself, wow, that is going to be a difficult one. But if you're going to do it, you're going to do it with multiple sites. Absolutely. Not one. Yeah,
that's the way to do it. Yep.
So what are your thoughts on franchising?
I always think with franchising, you think surely there is a market for great British fish and chips internationally to be successful. And yet, I know how Rams are obviously touching, sort of putting their foot in the water at the moment, and that, to varying degrees of success, I guess, because they haven't really managed to get it to any kind of scale. is that it's really difficult. I'd actually believe that you can't do it with our existing business model. I don't think you can get the stores to take enough money so that both the franchisee and the franchisor can win. There's just simply not the margin in it. And so you need to fundamentally change the business model.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, I do believe that there is an opportunity, and I think that opportunity is probably more international than it is
because
in the
you can lift those margins a bit more.
You can lift the margins a bit more. You don't have the competition, but you won't be able to go to Abu Dhabi and I believe and start selling rock eel. It's just not going to work.
No,
so you need to fundamentally change the business model, and how you do that, I'll tell you when I figured it out. It's something. It's an interesting one
because Harry Ramsden's, who have always been sort of like the biggest owned chain, I'd say. And I don't know where they're at the moment. I've never eaten one for a long time, and they seem to grow, and then they take a few steps back and they trip over a little bit. And in your eyes, what you're closer to them what we are. I suppose. What do you think that?
I think they've got a very different business model. Yeah. I think that they've been very successful in the motorway service stations. I think that works for them from what I understand. They are in tourist destinations on the whole. They run a very, very different business. And obviously with Boparin buying them, I think it was probably back in 2006 or something, 2005. At the time, we looked at potentially purchasing them. The capex levels just did not make sense for us. So we left it. I wish the best of luck to them, but it's you don't like to see an iconic brand like that die, and I think that they've done a good job. They've invested back in those stores and restaurants, and it's taken some time, and I wish them the best of luck because it seems to be turning around for them.
I think in many ways people are exposed to fish and chips at Harry Ramsden's when they wouldn't usually eat it elsewhere because it's at the seaside or whatever, and I think that there is a place for them. There is a place for everybody in this industry, and I think that there's plenty of business to go around. So when you've now expanded sort of like the business since you took over, have you ever considered expanding the rib or chicken side of the business? Because I'm guessing that on the meat side, the costs, let's say, are a little bit more stable. Let's say.
Yeah, they are. I mean, when you look at the cost of chicken, I think the cost of chicken hasn't changed really in the last 5 years, probably, compared to obviously what's been going on in the fish markets. I think it's realistically this then comes down to a wider question of how do you try and meet modern consumer trends as a business? So you have to change your menu. I'm constantly shocked when I go and see other fish and chip shops and they still have a very, very basic menu. I think that is certainly one of our strengths, is that we change our menu every year. We still have obviously the core items.
So you have
that
like
we're
a
always
core
going to
section
sell.
and then like a specials area, like a market board or something?
Not so much really, no, because we do specials all throughout the year, side orders and those kinds of things. But it's more that we really just look at what's going on out in the market. For instance, we introduced a bonus chicken product, which is very much like a McDonald's Chicken Select, which has been incredibly successful for us. And we introduced that onto the menu. We introduced halloumi burgers and onto the menu, again, been very successful for us. We've introduced better quality vegetarian options. I'm currently looking at some meat-free options with some suppliers as well, to ensure that we can cater for the sort of meat-free trend which is happening. How long, are these trends here to stay or not? Of course, is a whole topic of different topic of conversation. But I think you've got to change your menu. You have to stay relevant in this market. If you're not, your customer numbers are going to be going south really fast.
See, I see that work in two ways. I see other shops that literally have just stuck to fish and chips. And to be fair, they didn't do pies and they didn't do anything like that. It's probably fish and chips and sausage and bits and bobs, and they've just stuck core to the menu and probably still fry and dripping to some degree. And they're saying, look, people come here, and they're younger people because they know we've stuck to what we do best, and others will go to a vegan restaurant or a vegetarian restaurant and so on and so on. And so is there an element that sometimes you're trying to please everybody? Do you feel like that sometimes?
Well, we have a rule really that we're not allowed to add something to the menu unless we take something away. Okay, well, that's okay. Because otherwise our menus just get too big. Yeah. I think also it really depends on where you're situated, where your store is. If you're on the coast, then I can understand why you would just make the fish and chips play. It makes perfect sense. If, however, you are where we are, with the majority of our stores on neighbourhood shopping centres in big housing estates, then you need to be a little bit cleverer about what you do.
Now that makes complete sense, actually, because you need to get them through the door, and if you're not giving them what they perceive as healthy or vegetarian or vegan or whatever that week's fad is or whatever, I'm not saying that you're jumping on the fads, but if you're not doing what they see as important, they're not going to come in, are they?
No, that's right. And I think it's, you can always do, as you quite rightly say, you can do specials on your menus to see what the sales are like. If they don't work after 2 months, just take it off, but at least then you've given it a go. There are a few items that we've introduced recently that have been really successful for us, and also you just can't underestimate the fact you've got to bring in quality products. You can't just sort of say, I'm going to go with this trend because actually, I think it's the right thing to do, but that tastes rubbish, but I'm going to put it in anyway because that's what people like apparently if they're a vegan. That's just absolutely, that's ridiculous.
So you've got to give it a little bit more effort.
You've got to, you've got to believe in that product and think that is delicious, I would eat that myself, and you've got to be passionate about that as well, because otherwise why sell it?
I'm just imagining my dad just giving someone a vegetarian vegetable. Honestly. I could just, but there is a lot of that in the industry. And I don't just mean our industry, I mean the food industry, and it's literally, well, if you want vegetables, go to a grocery shop. And then I think, I think you do have to bend over backwards for customers. You do.
Yeah. So exactly right. And when I think about, so who is being uber successful at the moment in effectively the fast food industry, and you just got to hold McDonald's up and just say, wow, what a business. I mean, the way in which they can reinvent themselves time after time. I just, I find it incredible. And now, you've got kids' meals serving carrots, batons and cucumber sticks and grapes. And yet, why haven't we followed that same line?
I think McDonald's has come up in probably 90% of all the podcasts that I've done. And, they haven't been in, obviously, but, they've come up in conversation. And I don't think they still get as much credit as they deserve. No. And I think everyone's quick to say, oh, it's a load of marketing, it's a load of crap, the brand, blah, blah, blah. But I think you're right. Over the years, I remember a few years ago, probably about 10 years ago, they did the salad thing, and they bought into Pret a Manger, didn't they? And they did salads. And you know what? They do try. I think they do genuinely try. And but I think that if we're looking at what they're doing, we should be doing something similar. And I don't mean burgers. I mean looking at how they're trying to serve different customers.
Exactly right. Yeah. And how they are also looking to meet modern consumer trends and wants, and the way in which they leverage technology to create a better consumer experience.
I suppose you can still do fish and chips. You can still do fish and chips and serve the different things, just like they do burgers and still serve different things. Like they've not lost their way. No. The burger is still at the top of the tree, isn't it?
Yeah.
But so if we look at technology and the future, so at the moment you guys are doing a bit of Prio Day, which is for collections, Just Eat, Deliveroo, Uber Eats. Give us a little bit of information, or at least your thought process before you jumped onto these aggregators and everything.
Yeah, sure. So we could see that this is where the market was going, and we thought to ourselves, if we're not going to run towards that fire, we are just going to see customer numbers slowly falling away, and we're going to start to become irrelevant. This is the way in which people, certainly in the Southeast, I'm not saying this is everywhere, but certainly in the Southeast, at the moment, this is how a large proportion of society wants to have their food. And they want their food their way. If they want to click and collect it, that's how they want it. If they want to walk into the shop and buy it, that's how they want it. If they want it delivered, that's how they want it. What they want to know is they want a seamless, frictionless ordering experience in the way that they want it. So how do we as a business then make sure that we can facilitate that in as frictionless as possible way for us and give our customers what they want? So, quite simply, the easiest way is to embrace the delivery side of our business. And when you look at the numbers, I mean, they're absolutely staggering. You're talking about effectively, there's only 4% of restaurant and takeout food at the moment is actually delivered in the UK. And that's why Deliveroo, Uber Eats, Just Eat are all fighting for market share. You've also got Google now coming into the market.
Yeah.
Google are now basically releasing a ordering platform directly off their browser, and you just quite simply, you might type in, say, Churchill's Bewley Square, for instance, Chelmsford, and then it will just say next to it, order now, and you just click on that and it will automatically take you through to an aggregator's site.
So they're going to be the pre-aggregator.
Well, it's interesting. So who pays for that? It's always a thing.
You, of course. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. You know, and it's such a fast-paced environment. It really is. Amazon made an investment into Deliveroo of £460 million, and you think, Amazon with their infinite cash, infinite ability to chop data, to get insights from it, to use their technology to provide an incredible customer service. How are Deliveroo now suddenly going to change and raise the bar to the next level? And then Uber Eats are in talks to buy Just Eat. If Uber Eats buy Just Eat, suddenly again you've got them leveraging off technology, infinite cash pile, and then of course you've got Google. So you're talking about three of the biggest technology businesses in the world.
I think in some ways it'd be good to see consolidation, because having 4 or 5 of these platforms would just be a bit silly. But then costs are going to rise.
Well, this is it. Yeah, this is it. And I kind of see it going two ways, really. I think that how is this going to play out? I think for me, they can only do two things, which is one, they can produce the food cheaper. Yeah. Okay. And the way they do that is through the dark kitchens model. So for those people who maybe just don't know, there's a slight difference between virtual kitchens and dark kitchens. So a dark kitchen is effectively a kitchen is just in a warehouse on an industrial estate. A virtual kitchen is a kitchen in which you operate a food brand from your existing takeaway or restaurant, which is not the same food brand as what's above the door. Okay, so I see them. I see dark kitchens. There are 18 warehouses that Deliveroo operate.
Their own?
Yeah, which have dark kitchens, and they put operators into them at the moment. All right. which is another, which is obviously frightening, because it's frightening in terms of the fact that if Deliveroo then start to harness the data from their consumers, will they start to open their own dark kitchens? And you can imagine a time maybe where, if, for instance, Deliveroo see a really successful burger chain delivery area in central London, they will just knock them right the way down their search listings, put in their own brand, and they might even go and buy the company, or they'll go and just hire, a chef who's worked in that restaurant, or somebody who has the knowledge, and put them in there, and away they go, and then suddenly they've got a full vertical business. So that then is in a challenge. But kind of getting away, I think one is how what's going to happen in the market. I think that prices are going to come down, because I think places like dark kitchens are just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's going to be cheaper to basically produce that food. So therefore, for Deliveroo, obviously they're going to be able to charge their customers less than their competitors, because they're opening up so many dark kitchens. Two, I think that effectively winner takes all. I think it's going to be market share. I think that these people are just going to throw tens and hundreds of millions into these businesses and just try and grow market share to try and be number one and try and get velocity growth, as they call it. And then prices will go up.
So do you see yourself, with Prio Day, are you building up your own sort of delivery business at the same time, or do you ever see doing it all in house?
So we do. So we're on a journey with this, Dalio. It's we're learning as we're going, without a doubt. It's how we can try and obviously give our customers a delivery service, but also try and make as much money as possible as well. So we're just on a journey. We're trying anything and everything to realistically just see which model works best for us. Yeah, and that's all. I think, to be honest with you, that's all you can be doing really at the moment. Yeah. It is changing so fast.
And to those sort of people that say to you, delivery doesn't work for our business, what's the answer to that?
I'd say get rid of the real world. Yeah, that's what I would say. Even if you don't think it's with you now, it's going to be with you in a very short space of time. And if you haven't created an online food brand by then, you're going to be way behind the game.
Yeah. So you genuinely think that the footfall of customers walking through and queuing up is just going to slowly just dry up in time?
100% believe that.
So then, if that's the case, do you see a model where, there is a model there where the dark kitchens are just the most popular thing moving forward? Not now, but probably 10 years, 20 years.
I do. Look, they're already building, flats in Manhattan with no kitchens.
Yeah, I've seen that.
In London with no kitchens.
Yeah.
hotels are starting to rip their restaurants out and are just giving people a delivery menu. And so there's your choice. Yeah. So, why, as a restaurant, why would you want to provide food for your customers if you're in a 3-star hotel? There's skill involved, there's cost, there's hassle. Actually, just take that whole cost and worry away. And you're not going to be able to provide 217 different restaurant choices to that consumer. You can just give them a tablet and say, there you go.
Yeah, no, and they can order whatever they want.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's a scary thought, though, isn't it? It's a bit sad, like a bit antisocial in some ways.
It is. And I went to the Rainforest Cafe with my kids on Saturday, which had a trip out in London, and so everyone talks about experience. That was a great experience for the kids. They thoroughly enjoyed themselves. They loved seeing sort of the robotic monkeys on the walls and all sorts of things. And it was good fun. We enjoyed ourselves. So of course that experience culture, concept, which is now going to come to the fore. So then you have to say to yourself, okay, what is a fish and chip takeaway, as a fish and chip shop, fish and chip restaurant? How do you then, which way do you turn? Do you become an experience business, or do you just become a...
Well, I think the restaurant's always going to be an experience business, because if the hospitality was good, if you went to eat fish and chips at Bankers and hospitality was good and the waitresses were lovely, I felt like I had an experience.
Yes.
Where it doesn't have to be a stimulating experience, it just needs to be a positive one. But I think it's the takeaways where I probably see that they're going to probably face some issue here.
Yeah, you're right, and I understand that. It's just I think that. So I'll split that in two different ways. I see a sense of occasion and an experience as two different things. So I think a sense of occasion is where delivery food really works, whether it be you're watching the World Cup final, you are watching a movie with friends, there's something on Netflix. That is an occasion, so you use that occasion to get food in. I think you're quite right, Stella. So I think if you're looking for more of an experience, then I totally agree with you. Then you need to go out and have that kind of experience, and it's just about how do you create that experience in a restaurant environment where you have margins tightening, the national minimum wage increasing, and effectively you have less margin to play with.
I think there's going to be another squeeze here, and not to be controversial, but these guys, I'm going to say this without being really controversial, but the minute you employ this delivery model, the cash business is gone. It's just going to be a fully legit business, which I know you're not worried about because you've been doing it for forever. So, this is really going to put the squeeze on all food businesses. Because I think also in some ways people are attracted to the food business because of that element, I think, to some degree. You could have a good life out of it. But I do think the UK has been pretty slow to get onto the delivery bandwagon. If you think pizza and Chinese food and maybe Indian food at the most was always delivered. But now I think it's mostly everything.
Yeah, and I think you can't underestimate that technology has facilitated that to make it so much easier. And Wi-Fi and broadband,
the phone, the iPhone.
I mean, it has just fundamentally changed the way we shop. I mean, you look at what's going on just in the general retail environment at the moment. I mean, it's a bloodbath, basically. And you think companies like Next that made that move to digital a number of years ago, and how much of a percentage of that their business is now online digital sales is huge now compared to whatever it was, and it's growing at such a fast rate.
The high street's had such a massacre, hasn't it? If you look at it, and I was watching. I don't know if you've seen it, but I was watching a video with Mike Ashley from Sports Direct, and he was saying, everyone's just played it wrong. He was saying there needs to be an internet tax.
Yes.
And it needs to be that you pay if you buy online, but you get a discount, or at least you get it taken off if you collect it from the local town centre. And I was thinking that's a no-brainer. And then get rid of parking charges and so on and so on. Everything that they've systematically done that's ruined the high street, take it back. Every local high street I've been to, and I go to a lot of them because I park up and go around, it's a joke, mate, honestly.
No, I don't disagree with any of that. I really don't. And it's such a complex piece because you have so many pension funds are linked into the amount of rent that they're getting on properties, so they're not willing to drop them. And it's a very complex piece, and you're right, it's fundamentally broken.
Massively.
It really is, and I'm not entirely sure if certainly this government or the next government has the willpower to actually do something about it.
Yeah. So here's a question. Who owns the customer if you use an aggregator like Just Eat and so on and so on?
Yeah, absolutely. And they do. They own the customer. And it's interesting because we will get phone calls if we don't have something delivered on time. Mm-hmm. They see that as that's us. It's not maybe Deliveroo or Uber Eats. It's probably.
If we give you two examples, if someone has a positive example, they thank Just Eat, for argument's sake. And if they have a negative example, they're knocking on your door.
It can happen. Yeah. Absolutely, it can happen. I mean, not all the time, don't get me wrong, but yeah, that can happen.
So is it worth using the aggregators in order to build your own thing, do you think? Or just go with the flow, obviously.
We're just learning. There are various plays, I guess, that you can make, strategic plays, and it's just a matter of just trying them all to see what works.
Just go with the flow until you see what sticks.
Yeah, you've got it.
So in terms of the lunchtime business, how are you guys sort of tackling the lunchtime business with the likes of Greggs and Subway and all that lot? Sort of, I want to say discounters, but they're just lower value, aren't they? How do you deal with that?
How do we deal with it? Look, we run promotions at the moment. We've got a lunchtime still promotion. We do slightly smaller portions, under £5.
Yeah.
Has that been successful? Hasn't made a dramatic difference, really.
Yeah.
It's a challenge, I'm not going to lie. How do you try and drum up that lunchtime trade? I think seating is incredibly important. Again, if you're just a takeaway business, it really depends where you're located.
Yeah.
We've learned various things along our growth journey, and so we have certain principles that we stick to in terms of, if we're going to be opening a site on a high street, it has to have X, Y, Z. If we're going to be opening a neighbourhood shopping centre or a seaside town or whatever, there are certain things that you need to stick to, because otherwise the business model just doesn't work. And you tend to learn that the painful way, because crikey, I certainly don't get everything right and made plenty of mistakes and continue to make them. But because you're on a journey and you're learning, nobody really has successfully managed to scale a business in the fish and chip industry. And I think the work that James Lowe's doing at Deep Blue is fantastic. I can see what Harry Ramsden's are doing and George's Tradition, and I take my hat off to them, because we need more entrepreneurs like that within the industry who are willing to make the sacrifices and take those risks to create more job opportunities for people, and to really put fish and chips at the forefront of the food industry in the UK.
Yeah, jumping on to our next topic, but it comes off the back of that, I don't think that the United Kingdom celebrates the entrepreneur. And I was listening to a podcast, that was a BBC podcast a while ago, and there was a guy with a hotel chain, and he says that if I'm in America and someone sees me in a nice car, they say, oh, how do I get in one of those? And he goes, but in England, he goes, I feel like people are saying, how can I get him out of that? And it was just a sentiment, and it's just that, so do you feel that, do you feel that it's a government, is the government pro-business?
I mean, I guess there's two things there. So first of all, I think my fear with entrepreneurship is that it's been oversimplified.
Okay.
So what you hear about the tech stars who have been in their company for 5 years and sold out for £3 billion.
Yeah. And everyone thinks that's that.
Everybody thinks it's easy. I tell you now, it's not. Sacrifices you have to make a success of yourself and your own business are substantial.
Yeah.
If you're not willing to do that, and you're not willing to lay awake at 3 o'clock in the morning every now and then because you've got something on your mind, then then you're not going to be successful. It's hard and it's long, and you've got to stay in the game. And I just worry that it's overly simplified and overhyped, to a point actually where I think it's actually detrimental. And I think you get a lot of people coming into business who ultimately really don't have a clue what they're doing, and haven't been trained in the right way, don't understand what's involved, the risks involved, and I think that's really dangerous. I mean, the second thing is, do I think the government have supported, business? I'd say that probably this Conservative government are probably the most unfriendly business government that I've known, or business administration. I mean, I'm a Conservative fan just at the moment, and I don't really understand what they're trying to achieve at the moment with business, and certainly there's been quite a bit of rhetoric out in the newspapers with various MPs talking very negatively about business, and it riles me, quite frankly, when we're the people out there who are trying to drive the British economy forward, and it seems to me like they're trying to do everything but drive the British economy forward at the moment.
It's just a weird stance that they're taking, because I think the last sort of couple of terms, it seems like they're just hitting us with everything. Minimum wage has gone up to living wage, and that's probably going to go up again. Obesity, they blame it on business, obviously. The VAT, there's no sort of negotiation there, is there? Everything just seems to be, well, at the moment, everything's about one topic anyway. So, they're all just sort of headstrong about that. But I was reading the paper this morning, and they were saying a couple of MPs are promising a VAT reduction in the next election. And I just think, I can't see it. I don't know what you think, but I don't know what you thought when you read that.
If I'm honest, I think it's a joke at the moment. I think realistically, those candidates for the Tory party leadership are unfortunately willing to almost say anything to try and get themselves into power, and I think they're playing to the populist vote at the moment within the Conservative Party, which I think is incredibly dangerous for me, and I can't really understand what they're trying to achieve. I think, look, I mean, all I know is that it's certain. I mean, it's interesting. I spoke to our accountant about this the other day, actually, and he said that every single one of his customers said to him that if they were starting their business that they started 30 years ago today, they probably wouldn't be able to make a success of it, because it is just everything's so much more competitive. The costs are so much higher of running a business. The red tape you have to jump through, health and safety, it is just harder and harder and harder. And how then, as a business, when you're trying to grow a business as we are, do you try and get those cost bases right all the time, and it's hard. It's
not as easy as selling and buying. You know that, and I know that how much of your time or your admin team's time or someone in your business, how much time are they doing that isn't selling or buying? There's, I've got to fill out this paperwork, take temperatures for this, I've got to make sure I've got this traceability report, I've got to do this, I've got to, every website I go on now, there's an anti-slavery statement. And I think, and I get it, it's all there for a reason, I get it. But it's just like, is it just red tape for red tape's sake? And I just think, I get it. You should, do we need an anti-slavery statement though?
I think this is where I think this is it's gone way the other way now. For me, it used to be a little bit more of middle of the road. I fear that it's just creating more cost and more burden on businesses. And if you're a small business owner trying to manage all of these different aspects and all these different costs coming into you all the time, it's incredibly hard. And I think, again, this is where, unfortunately, at the House of Commons, is that you just don't have enough people at the top level who have actually
done built a business,
been an entrepreneur, been in business, been out in the real world. When you have career politicians, that's all they know, and I think that is not a cross section of society by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
I think therefore that just leads to a completely clouded judgment and a very introspective way of thinking.
The problem with all this red tape is that it makes the barrier to entry so high. And then if you want to have a business or do a business, you need to go and get, VC funds or a big bank loan or something, because you're going to need all those people to make sure that, that paperwork happens,
You do. And as you grow it, if you're trying to grow organically without getting any outside finance, it's really challenging, because suddenly as you grow, you realise you need to do this and you need to do that. And suddenly, oh my goodness me, you haven't got a risk assessment document for that, and we haven't. And so suddenly you're just there's always more and more and more to do. And how do you try and keep those cost bases sensible as you grow? Because obviously, when you're growing, how do you try and really scale a business? Do you look to try and employ the people first and then grow, or do you get to a point where people are bursting at the seams, then you go and get the person, and then you risk blowing up your team. And it's a really tough balancing act to find, actually, and especially where you're in traditionally a low margin business, which restaurants, takeaway businesses are, is when you're not working on massive margins, it's only, you only need to make a couple of wrong hires, and you can change things quite substantially. So,
and how do you see?
Be very careful.
How do you see? Well, I don't think anybody can see this, but I had it in my questions anyway. How do you see Brexit affecting the business?
I mean, our business, I think probably for us that the devaluation of the pound is probably already built in to the current price, I would think. Other than that, I mean, we stockpiled some product, and we'll continue to do that to a certain degree. A no-deal Brexit concerns me greatly. I sort of see it almost. I mean, I don't know how you think it's going to go, Stelios. I mean, what are your views? How do you think this is going to play out?
I think if we just look at commodities, I think we'll be all right with wheat and potatoes. That's all homegrown. I'm assured by the fish guys that it will probably be very much the same. So I think more than anything, it's consumer confidence.
Yes.
Yeah, I think if you think that British aren't really savers anymore, and if you pile that in with increased interest rates later on, I just feel like people are just going to clamp down, and the confidence is just going to go, and they're just going to say, stuff it, I'm not spending any money.
Yes.
And I think that has the effect. That's not going to have the desired effect, I don't think. I think, and that's not Brexit's fault, I get that, but I think it's one contributing factor. So I think that if you pile that all in, I'm no expert. I'm not an economic expert, and most people listening to this might say I'm chatting crap.
No. I think that I take the point, but I think the worry is that when you have, and I can understand why you're saying that, because when you have, some of the leaders of Britain's biggest businesses, you have Mark Carney, governor of the Bank of England, you have the Mayor of London coming out and saying a no-deal Brexit would be catastrophic to the British economy. You've got to stand up and take notice of these people. And so therefore, what does that mean for our industry? Or what does it mean for us? I mean, I personally probably see Brexit working out in two ways. It's probably a sliding doors kind of scenario where I think that you're going to be in a situation where House of Parliament MPs are not going to be able to come to a collective decision on what they want to do with Brexit, and I think they're going to put it out to the people to decide. It will either, and I can see there being three questions almost on the ballot paper: is do we remain in Europe? Do we leave with Theresa May's deal? Because I don't believe anyone's going to be able to negotiate a better deal. They've already said that. And three, do we leave with a no deal? And effectively, the MPs are just going to give it to the people to decide. Because
we all know best.
Well, of course, we know the intricacies of employment law, but and then I think probably secondly, I think that obviously with what's going on with the Tory party leadership, I could see it basically just a no deal Brexit just being ramrodded through the Houses of Parliament, which. When you've got people like that saying that would be, disastrous for the British economy, you do take a sharp intake of breath.
I must admit, even on a good day, it's just hard to know where to look. Yeah, you hear people say, no, it'll all be okay. And I don't mean even the people that are like forcing the point home. It's just people saying, look, it'll be okay. We'll get deals, etc., etc. And then there's others that are just screaming, saying, no, it won't be okay. It won't be okay. Like, I just feel like as a business owner, although we've been informed along the way, I get emails from HMRC and all that. I feel informed, but I don't like what I'm being informed with. So I am getting the regular updates, but are they helpful? Probably not. So I think that it's going to be tricky times, and for me, I think that food prices will stay stable. Well, they can't get any worse than what they've been anyway, but that's for a different reason anyway. But I think that for me, it's just the consumer confidence. And if they're not spending, then and because also, if we look at your industry, fish and chips isn't that cheap meal anymore. So we've come to a fork in the road. My next question is essentially, but now we've hit that point, how do you, with all these increasing prices, make sure that you keep price is sensible for the consumer, but also keep costs down within the business?
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, we're working on a different level to the majority of the industry. We're just very, so we do have economies of scale, which does make life easier for us, and it does without a doubt. So we have an advantage. So we do. I think all I would say is that there's no point in running a business at a loss. If you truly believe in what you're doing and the quality of the product that you're selling, and you've got a nice environment for the shopper to shop in, give that consumer, say, a true omnichannel experience across delivery and click and collect and everything else. Make sure you charge a price which allows you to get the gross profit that you need to run your business, and ultimately the net profitability. Otherwise, what's the point? There is no point. It's a fool's game for me if you start to try and do what the guy next door to you is doing, or the guy half a mile away. We now consciously don't go out and see what other people are charging in the marketplace. We believe in what we're doing, and we effectively set our own pricing, really. Of course, we're conscious of how we do that. Of course we are. You have to be. But ultimately, we truly believe in what we're doing. So we say to ourselves, will the 50,000 customers a week we serve, will they happily stomach an extra 10p on a portion of chips? The answer is yes, they've got to. And we have very, we really worry about some of these decisions sometimes as a team of directors. But actually, we get very little feedback when we do put prices up. But obviously, you need to be sensible. But if you truly believe what you're doing, then small price hikes here and there shouldn't really have a material effect on your customer numbers.
Every now and then you see an increase, you then quietly just push it up a little bit and then move along. But don't wait 3 years and then just jack it up a pound.
No, you can't do that, especially with the way that if you've got food inflation running at 12%, which is what it's been running at, your margins are just going to tank, and you can't afford to do that. If you remember, it's not just about making the bottom line. It's about employing the people in the business to make sure you can secure their employment. That's ultimately what it's about. You've got to do the right thing by them. And if that means you need to make that tough decision to put prices up by 5 or 10p, well, then you've got to do it. You need to secure their employment for the long-term future, which means you've got to run the business prudently. And part of that is obviously making sure when you need to do a price increase, you do it.
And do you think people look less at the price when they pay by card? Because we're moving towards a very cashless society, and I think it's come faster than what people expect. So do you think that gives you a bit more leeway to sort of, play with your prices a bit more?
I think it does. And I think, again, that's why it's, important that you do give consumers the opportunity to pay digitally if that's the way they want to pay. Facilitate again that frictionless consumer experience which people are looking for. Millennials and Gen Z wouldn't dream of going to cash point and getting 200 quid out for the weekend. It just wouldn't happen. Would not happen. So unless you're willing to make the changes in your business to serve those customers of the future, those customers, if they're not coming to you when they're 25, they ain't going to be coming to you when they're 35, and they're certainly not going to be coming to you when you're 40. So you've got to make sure
it's true.
do that.
If they haven't eaten fish and chips in their 20s, it's not going to be like in their 40s. I fancy that fish and chips meal that I've never had before. It's just not going to happen, is it?
No, it's not.
So I think... So again, one tip you'd give people is to embrace the credit card then, or as in the debit card or whatever, the card.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and would you say that's probably bigger than sort of deliveries and all that? If you've got to get on that first, really, haven't you?
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do.
So we've spoke a lot about, just by chance there, a lot of risks, but also a lot of opportunities there. How do you think fish and chip shops can stay relevant? And it's probably going to be one of those answers, clearly, or if not all of them, but...
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's about making sure that, obviously, number one, you empower your people to be extraordinary, that you look after the people within the business because they're the ones that are serving the customers. And I think people talk about, for me, what does an exceptional customer experience actually mean? I think people expect to go into a nice looking shop. Yeah. They expect to get good quality packaging. That's the standard. That's recyclable. Yeah. They expect for you to source all of your products from sustainable sources. Now, and they expect customer service. Yeah. And then, what you need to then is go above and beyond for those customers to create that true great customer experience. And that's why one of our values is go above and beyond, because you need to do that. Otherwise, everything else is just an expectation of a consumer. Yeah. How do you then try and change that and create a brand is for me, is actually just going above and beyond what people now expect as normal, but what you put so much hard work into. And let's not forget, ultimately, hospitality needs to be at the core of our business. We are here to serve our customers. So if that's the case, then just a normal level of service is expected. So how can we try and do more? That's what really wows customers.
So essentially expectations are just so high today.
They are incredibly high. They really are. They've never been higher. And you just look at how sophisticated the food market is in the UK. I mean, I was in London yesterday. You go into London and you just walk around central London and see the quality of the fit outs, the quality of the food photography. And that isn't just one. That's everybody is playing that game.
And then to open and just have it tiled with a sign up, it just doesn't hit it.
Does not hit it.
And it is weird because essentially the food space has become very brand driven, but you can still have a brand that, even in a local area, that sort of identifies what you are, and it could be a local business, but you still need a brand.
Absolutely,
and I think, it's so important. Isn't it?
It is, and I sort of think, I think of Simpsons. I think they do a great job with their branding. It's a great kind of case study on how you can create your own brand, make it ownable in your local area. I think they're absolutely fantastic at it, and and then how do we as a business then try and do the same in our local, in our localities as well. And the questions you always are asking yourself. But I do recognise, when you're an independent operator and you're working in your shop and you're working 70, 80 hours a week, you're not going to suddenly create a Facebook strategy. It's just not going to happen, So it's about doing the simple things
but
right.
At the same time, it's the easiest it's ever been. All you need to have is an iPhone or an Android phone, and you just sign up to Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, and you don't have to have a strategy. You just need to have you just need to have a bit of time.
You do. And I kind of disagree with you there, because for me, you need to know who your customer is to know which channel you need to market them to. Anyway, but
I think more so. I think just get on it first. I think the strategy will come later, and I think that if I was talking about Chinese food instead of batter mix, then clearly there'd be something wrong, wouldn't there? And I think that, but I think initially just get on there, test the waters, see what your people like. Your people, it sounds awful, but just see what your customer base likes, because it might not actually be that they want offers thrown at them. They just might want to just see you and remember you. And I think that's the key thing now. Like, advertising before used to be at bus stops and billboards and then on the TV. Now it's on the sofa, on your phone, so I think that it gives you the opportunity to be with that customer when you wouldn't usually be with them, if that makes sense. But that's my thought on social media and all that, bits and bobs. But so how do you validate customer eating habits through social media? Do you follow a lot of what happens with social media in your businesses today?
Yeah, we do. I mean, we've got a social media manager in our business who is continually creating content, who is tracking, marketing campaigns against spend, return on investment. For a business our size, not to be on social media, I think would be crazy. However, you can look at, say, somebody like JD Wetherspoon, who decided to come away from social media completely because of the time and the complexity of actually running a social media department. For them, was actually just not worth worth the workload and the cost. But I think there has never been a cheaper way to market and actually target who your audience is than there is now. And also for me, it's about engagement. It's about engaging with the community who are your customers, and it's about how do you do that, and how do you then try and lead that engagement through to sales. It's of course a bigger topic, and how do you try and get that funnel right. And we can very easily track that across social media. The social media manager we've got, she does a brilliant job. And not only that, but it enables us to talk directly with our customers when we get things wrong. And we do get things wrong. And so she works over the weekends, and she looks after any customer complaints, any customer messaging that comes in. And she does a brilliant job. And it's about how do you try and then turn those people into raving fans. It's obviously, you don't particularly want to make a complaint on social media and someone come back to you 3 weeks later. We try and do our very best to do that fairly instantly, really.
So you want to turn that complaint into a lifelong customer, essentially.
Absolutely.
So we've probably hit all of our topics there, and which is great because you've given me lots of really key things to think about. So I am a little bit mind blown here, James. So how do you continue personal learning?
So I think probably the biggest and best thing I've ever done is in 2013 I joined an organisation called the Young Presidents Organisation. It is an organisation for CEOs and entrepreneurs under the age of 49 with a business turnover in excess of 10 million. It does depend on what industry you're in. Financial services, 100 million. And that has just been incredible for me. The learnings I've got from the other entrepreneurs and CEOs within my chapter. I'm in something called the London chapter. There are 4 chapters in London. I've just been transformational. Probably the biggest thing that it gives you is that we meet for something called Forum once a month for about 4 hours. There's about 8 or 10 other, again, entrepreneur CEOs from a diverse sector of industries. And you talk about your business, and it's basically like having a non-executive directorship available to you once a month. And when you've got people there that have scaled their businesses to billion-pound businesses, it's just incredible the learnings you get from it. Also, they do a lot of executive learning as well at London Business School, at Harvard Business School, at Columbia, at Stanford, for 4 or 5 days. Because one of the challenges when you're busy running a business and growing a business, when do you get a chance to take 2 years off to do an executive MBA? That's just not going to happen. So for me, and I did my A-levels. Basically started working in a fish and chip shop straight away. I've never really had the time or the opportunity to actually go out and get that kind of executive learning. And it's just the Young Presidents Organisation is absolutely phenomenal. And whilst I appreciate that's on a bigger scale, I would really urge any entrepreneurs out there to have a look at things like the Entrepreneurs Organisation or Supper Club. These are sort of smaller types of business networking organisations like YPO, and they're absolutely a brilliant way of networking with other business leaders and entrepreneurs who are going through the same kinds of thing as you do. It gives you the opportunity to talk to them about your own challenges. And for me, it's been incredible. And I thank my lucky stars that I picked up James Cahn's autobiography in 2011 when I was on holiday in Mexico, sitting on a beach, and he talked about YPO in that, about how he scaled his recruitment business, Alexander Mann. And so that's where I read about YPO, and I just simply knocked on the door and said, "Hey, this is me. Can I join?" And at the time, I probably didn't quite realise what I was actually joining and what an incredible organisation it is. It's 33,000 members in 140 countries, and it's all about impact. It's about how, as we as CEOs and entrepreneurs, can we have the most impact on the world we live in.
So do you have to do any like funny handshakes or anything?
Yeah, there's a funny one. No, there isn't.
And what happens when you turn 49? They throw you out?
No, they don't. You go into something called YPO Gold.
Gold
after that, at 49, which is quite daunting. I'm a little way off there yet.
I was going to say, no, you are, but it sounds like they're going to stick you on the Saga cruise ship.
Yeah, it does. We do joke about that. Yeah. But I mean, another thing that they do is they provide a mentorship course, which is just amazing. So, you basically meet once a month with your mentor at no extra cost. And so, you can be mentored by, just incredible business people who have just been incredibly successful. And the learnings you get from that. Where else are you going to go and be able to have, that kind of learning experience, but also have those kind of honest conversations that are completely non-judgmental, that are completely objective in a business environment. You can't have them with your friends because you just can't. No. You can't have them with your family, and yes, you do have them with your wife. Hopefully, you do if that's all going well. But it is a kind of a one-off opportunity to be able to do that, and it's been amazing for me.
So, where do you find the time to juggle a young family, growing company, and obviously personal growth? Where how do you juggle it all?
I think what I'd probably say on this is that the whole work-life balance theory is complete garbage. Not because I don't think you can achieve it. I think it's just that you prioritise different things at different points in your life. I think there's a time to prioritise work over sport, which I love. There's a time to maybe just do that the other way around in terms of your family. Family comes first, obviously. But also, you know, living in the real world, there are times where you need to prioritise work over family. There just are. You know, so I think it's really about knowing yourself well enough. I think to be really honest with yourself and say, do you know what, I feel like I'm getting run down here, or I feel like I'm getting tired, or I need some mental space, because that would make me become a better father, a better CEO, a better person. So therefore, I'm going to go and join a five-a-side football team just to have an hour on a Wednesday night. Or, you know, personally, I still play rugby. I'm captain of one of the rugby teams in Bishop Stortford, and I do that every Saturday afternoon. And just having, you know, another, you know, hour and a half or 2 hours at the weekend where it's just your time, just for you. For me, it's amazing. I thoroughly love it. No, I do. I love it. I love it. I must admit, my alcohol intake's gone up quite substantially, but I absolutely love it. I really do.
I think I agree with that completely. You know, and my company's a lot smaller than yours, but you know, the workload is just, you know, off the chart.
Quite really different.
And you do often think, wow, like, you know, when do I just get a moment just to recharge that mind, recharge them batteries, you know?
Yeah.
So, book recommendations. Last time we met, we sort of touched on the fact that you like to read books, and so give us your book recommendations.
So I think for me, I think you said to me, give me 3, Stelios.
Well, I said you can have as many as you want. You gave me 3.
I thought so. I've kind of just tried to keep things simple. Really. I think Losing My Virginity, Richard Branson. I think that's just absolutely fantastic, and that really is kind of, to a certain degree, a little bit of business 101 as well in there. It just really talks to you a lot about culture and teaches you the fundamentals and the principles of how to scale a business, which I think is absolutely fantastic. I put Homosapiens in there just because I think, again, it really takes you to a different place mentally. And it just, you know, psychologically, it's really, really interesting.
Makes you realise how insignificant this moment is.
Yes, absolutely. And it gives you, a sense of purpose, probably the wrong thing to say, but a sense of perspective, I think I would probably say. It's probably the right thing to say. And probably my favourite book at the moment is Principles by Ray Dalio. So Ray Dalio owns a company called Bridgepoint Capital, and they're the biggest hedge fund in the world, I believe. And he basically talks about how in his business they created a set of principles around pretty much every process and every decision-making process within the business. Now, that can sound a bit robotic saying it like that, but what it ultimately means is that everybody knows how to act and how to react within certain frameworks to ensure that the business is as successful as possible. And I've taken a lot of the learnings from that book into our business, in terms of looking at, you know, from bottom up, okay, here's our business objectives for the year. What principles do we need to put in place now as a business to ensure that we meet those business objectives? So idea what's the strategy really, but and those principles then are, you know, they don't get broken, they're fundamental.
It's a deep book.
It's a big book,
and I love the quality of it. The quality of the binding's amazing. But I remember reading it, and it opens your brain in so many ways, but at the same time I couldn't use it for some of my business because it just doesn't make sense. And I can imagine how lots of people wouldn't like to be evaluated by their peers in a meeting either. So I
think it's about honest communication.
That's it.
And one of the things that I certainly try and do with our team is, you know, just try and really be honest with each other.
Still be
as
respectful.
much as you can. Absolutely, you can, and you have to be. You know, you have to be. Especially when there are just so many things, and, you know, so many fires burning at once. Is just, you know, the realization also you can't put all those fires out at once. Sometimes you go home and those fires are still burning because it's just impossible to just to do everything all the time. And then understanding as a team, I think, you know, what, you know, laying out the expectations about what fires can burn and what you have to put out as well. But yeah, it's a fantastic book, and I thoroughly enjoy it. But it is, it's a long read. And, you know, another thing that I listen to a lot of podcasts. You know, where I'm driving around our stores, you know, driving down to Basingstoke or Brighton or Oxford or wherever, I find a podcast called Masters of Scale absolutely brilliant by Reid Hoffman.
I was just thinking Reid Hoffman.
Reid Hoffman's the founder of LinkedIn, and he was also on PayPal's board as well. He's also a partner now at Greylock, venture capital business in Silicon Valley, and he's just been incredibly successful. But he will interview Mark Zuckerberg,
Yeah.
Sheryl Sandberg, Brian Chesky at Airbnb, all these company founders across, not just technology, other sectors as well, about how they scaled the business, their journey, and the takeaways are just brilliant.
Yeah.
It's really slickly produced, just like your programs, Dennis.
You didn't have to.
And it does. It really gets to the nub of how to try and scale your business and the principles that you need to introduce to do it. And it's fascinating hearing of the journeys. It really is. What they talk about quite a lot of, how people think you're crazy for trying to introduce, say, a new piece of technology, and then suddenly 5 years in the future, well, that's just the way it is.
That's just normal now. Yeah.
So it's amazing hearing of those stories and about how they've grown their business and how they've done it so fast as well. It's incredible.
Yeah, well,
really
when you
it.
get that sort of capital in a business, though, it does loosen them wheels pretty fast. It
does, and this is interesting. So it's an interesting point because you look at, say, Uber, you think, well, Uber have said they're probably never going to make a profit. So then you look at that and you think, okay, well, if I never had to make a profit, I could do pretty well too. So it's a funny,
it's amazing to think
environment
that Amazon only made their first proper profit a year ago.
Yes.
Jeff Bezos, one of the richest men in the world.
Yes.
And you think, wow, how does that happen?
I mean, I understand it. I do understand it because their argument is, well, if we stop growing, we're just the cash flow will just pull through.
Yeah, exactly.
And to a certain degree, I can see that in our own business. If we stop growing, the cash flow pulls through.
Yeah.
I think one of the only slight issues I've got with that whole business model is that it does create a huge finance bubble, whereby you do then suddenly have institutional investors, pension funds, investing in these businesses. Do these businesses then get so big that they can't fail?
Yeah.
And I think that we'll only find that out when one eventually does.
That'll have some tailwind, won't it?
Will it? I mean, it could be another layman's. You can imagine if Uber, went into administration for whatever reason, if that would ever happen, because would people actually let it happen?
Yeah.
Are they too big?
I wonder if there's just so many companies now that are just too big to fail.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think they're getting that way. We are getting that way. Yeah.
So, mentors. Who are your mentors?
So I've been really fortunate. I mean, my father's an incredible CEO. I've learned a huge amount from him, working with him. For nearly 20 years now. I think it really proved it to me when we did the management buyout in 2004. We borrowed quite a lot of money from NatWest, who supported us, and things were tight. We were paying a lot of money back to the bank every single week, and yet he ran the business so incredibly well. That we never really had a serious blip throughout that whole 10-year period, and I take my hat off to him. He's a details man, he is a people person, and he's just been an incredible mentor for me, and he's somebody that I'm really proud of, and what he's achieved is incredible. And I thoroughly enjoy working with him even today, and we have a great relationship. I'm very, very fortunate in the relationship that we have. And personally, I was in 2012 when I bought my brothers and sisters out of the company. He really supported me in that, and I was very lucky to have that sort of parental support to actually make that deal happen. And then also in 2016, when I bought the controlling share from him, he really supported me in doing that as well. So I've been really fortunate with him as a mentor. And then just a few other people as well. So as I said, YPO runs a mentorship program. There's a guy called Martin Dawes who has been fundamental to my success. He's a dyed-in-the-wool entrepreneur. He started a company called Coffee Nation, and probably know it as Costa Express that you see in the petrol stations now. Grew that from 0 to 28 million in 9 years. he's an incredible guy. I've learned a huge amount about being an entrepreneur from him, and he's become a good friend of mine as well. And we often chew the fat and talk about business. He's a great guy. And then also, I've got a guy at the moment on our advisory board called Jeff Gooch, who's CFO of a financial services business called Market. He was CFO there, where they floated on NASDAQ for $3.2 billion, and then he effectively orchestrated a merger with IHS as well to create IHS Market, a $19 billion company. He retired at 50, and he's just an incredible. He's got an incredible brain from a finance point of view. He's incredible from a business strategy point of view. He's absolutely amazing. And so to have him on our advisory board is a game changer.
Yeah,
he's just brilliant. He really, really is. And then secondly, actually, just I'm very fortunate to work with some incredible people as well. And I think Paul Goodgame, our operations director, I would count him as a mentor to me. We're similar age, but I've learned so much from him about the way that he conducts himself, about the way that he is a meticulous operator. His attention to detail is far better than mine. If I'm being honest, we all have our strengths and weaknesses, and the way in which he connects with his teams in the stores, and how people genuinely want to work for him. I take a lot from him, and he's an inspiration to me every day, as is a number of other people in our business.
Fantastic. And before we wrap this up, excuse the pun, what do you see for the Chesterford Group moving forward? Just to put you on the spot.
No, not at all. I think realistically for us right now, it's about steady growth. It's about prudent growth. I think it would be silly to do anything but that. We're opening in Ruislip in September. We also hope to be opening in Eastbourne before Christmas, in Milton Keynes just after Christmas as well. I think it's look. I don't want to make too much of a big deal of it. We've already talked about it, but with Brexit on the horizon, consumer confidence, as you quite rightly say, what you don't want to be doing right now is over leveraging yourself. That is for certain. However, I do genuinely believe that the runway for our business is huge. I certainly believe the way in which we create a genuine omni-channel experience and a frictionless ordering experience for our consumers helps us to stand out from not just other fish and chip shops, but also from other operators, individual operators, Chinese, Indian, other people in the food industry. So I just see us just continuing that growth pattern, 4 to 6 stores a year in the meantime, and then just seeing what happens, really. I think it's pointless in this current economic environment to even think about trying to create a business plan outside of 2 years, because it's just changing so fast.
So the 5-year plan's out the window.
Oh, it is. It's just don't even bother.
Don't even bother. 24-month plan.
I've been there. Don't even bother.
Well, James, I just want to say, thanks for your time. I think we've discussed loads, and I think maybe we can have another conversation in about a year's time. And I think there'll be, again, with the fast-moving market, I think there'll be plenty to talk about.
Absolutely.
But thanks for that, mate, and have a great day.
No problem. Thanks, Dalio.
I hope you all liked episode 17 with James Lipscombe, the Managing Director of the Chesterford Group. We would love to hear your thoughts on the discussion on our Facebook discussion group. Just search for the Sarah's Podcast. You can also now follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Again, just search the Sarah's Podcast. Thanks so much for your support, and be sure to leave us a review in iTunes.